what I know now, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Take those fragile years, all your worry and tears, and put them on me. Oh, I must admit, when I think of how far we've come, it was worth the risk, 'cause it dug us a deeper love. Never in a million years did I think I'd get so lucky. Never in a million years did I think you'd be mine. And now I can't imagine a life without you, and every song that I write's about you. Just thought you should know I'll never let you go. Never in a million years. Never in a million years. Honey, I've been thinking about how we've come to be found in this moment. Makes it easy to believe, must be more to you and me, something magic. And I must admit that every morning I wake up,
Here on
either I must be dreaming or I must be lost
this
in
is right where we're at. Here at Windermere Cove. This is our dock at Windermere Cove. Beautiful lake. Stunning day. Mid-70s today. And I was going to bring my paddleboard, but decided it probably made more sense to take the whitewater boat out so I could show some of the paddle techniques that I was talking about in my earlier whitewater videos. This is obviously your kind of gentle forward paddle. Let me do a few things here before I get too crazy. Strap my paddle and my shoes down so they don't go somewhere on me. Obviously, you want to fit your thigh straps for the best control of your boat. And I typically wear sandals while I'm on the boat, because if I do come out, I want to have sandals on in case, you know, end up in the river. Protect your shoes, or your toes, feet. So, generally speaking, when you paddle, you want to paddle from your knee to about your butt. You're just making really short strokes. The reason why you make those short strokes is it helps control the amount of tilt of the boat. See how it's able to go straight really easily here? I'm not getting pushed from one side to another. There's, you know, a little bit of tacking back and forth, but it's maintaining its forward momentum pretty easily. If you make those long strokes, you're doing a lot of this, which is super inefficient and uses a lot of power. Offset paddle versus flat paddle. Okay, so I can make this paddle, fortunately, is capable of being anything I want, from totally straight to left-handed or right-handed. Fancy Werner technique. So let's go totally straight. So 0 degrees on the dial. So straight paddles, essentially what it's going to do, it's going to force your hand in an ideal situation, whether your shaft is indexed like mine, meaning that it's got kind of an ovalized section for your hand, whether it's indexed like mine or not, you want to line your knuckles up with the blade for like an ideal paddle stroke. And when you have a fixed paddle like this, what your tendency is going to be to grip fairly tight, and you want to kind of grip at right angles on your shoulders. So that's kind of like your proper paddle grip. And you tend to grip fairly tight that way, and it can get a little hard on your wrist after a while. You end up having, I don't know if you can see this, but during the paddle stroke, my wrist is kind of naturally moving around a little bit. And then it's, of course, doing the same thing on the other side. So that's kind of some side effects of having flat paddle blades. Another side effect is if you're paddling on a day when you have a 20-mile-an-hour upwind, upstream wind, which I don't know why, but seems to happen a lot to us, then you're constantly pressing the back of that paddle blade into the wind with every stroke. And you wouldn't think it would make much difference, but I can tell you it does. So that's another reason why you want to use an offset. What are some downsides of this? Okay, so I'm paddling along, a wave hits me from the side. I've got my paddle in the water, wave hits me from the right side. Your first inclination is to brace from the other side. Well, if I've just paddled, my brace is going to come down fast and hard to stop me from flipping, and my paddle is going to have to be twisted 90 degrees to facilitate an optimal brace. And I guess if you paddle this way all the time, you just get used to it. But the nice thing about offset is you don't even have to do it. It's already in that position. Your blade is already at virtually 90 degrees. And just like when you fall, your first inclination is to put your hand down. Your first inclination when you're in a whitewater situation to get hit by a wave or a hole or some sort of suction on the side that you want to avoid falling into, you want to put your paddle blade down to stop you from falling into that hole or spot. And it's called a brace. So there's a low brace, which is your hand pressing down, usually using the back of your paddle. And then there's a high brace, which is like this. And those should be avoided because you can injure your shoulder, neck, this whole upper scatula area, because the water is obviously a lot more powerful than you are. And if you're doing a high brace, it's usually like here on the last ditch, you're about to flip situation, and they can be dangerous. If you keep tight during your high brace, then you're fine. But a lot of people end up doing a lot of this, and that's where you get injured. So I paddle with a 60-degree offset because that's what I'm used to. A lot of people will paddle with a 45, which is much closer to straight, but it still gives you those benefits. So in a situation where you've got your left paddle blade in the water and you get hit by a really strong wave, your paddle blade's already there. You can press it down with the flat of the blade and save yourself from possibly flipping. Of course, it doesn't always work, but that's the theory. So in addition to that, when you're paddling into the wind, you're not presenting the blade, the flat of the blade to the wind, so it's more effortless. This is can be confusing for a lot of people. I've been paddling this way since basically birth, so it becomes a second nature to me. But the basic gist is anytime you paddle any paddle, you're going to have your control hand. If you're right-handed, it's right side. If you're left-handed, it's left side. But your control hand's going to stay fixed on the blade or on the paddle shaft. Again, kind of 90-degree angles from your shoulders. And your knuckles should line up with the top edge of the blade, so you can get an efficient paddle stroke. And then what happens when you make a paddle stroke, of course, you make your paddle stroke kind of from in front of the knees to your butt, bring it up, and then, of course, you naturally need to position the blade on the other side. So see what my arm does? See how my wrist isn't doing a lot of this like it was when I was paddling with two fixed blades? So I bring my paddle up, and it's naturally in the position. So my wrist is staying relatively straight the whole time. And it does take a little work to kind of get that lineup down, but it's not, see, I'll go real slow here. It's not a crazy amount of movement. It's just a little bit of kind of, I guess, timing, but you pick up on it quick. Go to a lake sometime and just paddle back and forth, and it won't take much. Also notice what's going on with my left hand versus when I was paddling with 2 fixed blades, or with the flat paddle blade setup. My left hand is virtually, I'm just basically holding on with a ring, and I'm pressing on the paddle, of course, to give myself that pivot power. Just like I am when I'm doing this, I'm gripping the front and pressing to create that pivot power. But it's not just your arms, because if you're only paddling with your arms, you're missing out on about 90% of your power. You really need to engage your torso, your shoulders, because that's where all your power comes from. That's how you get from A to B quickly. Is you're engaging that power. It's not just engaging your arms. Because as you can see, my arms are nothing. So if it was all about arms, I would be the worst kayaker in the world. And you're just trying to spot where you're going. I mean, if you can pull into an eddy and spot that way, you get like halfway down the channel of the rapid, grab an eddy and get a little bit closer look, that's great. But if you're just thinking, oh, I think I need to move a little bit to the right. Well, what a lot of people would do is they would kind of do a sweep and they would paddle to the right a little bit and then sweep back, right? You could do that, but you're also going to be moving downstream at the same time doing that, generally speaking. You're going to be moving downstream. What if you just want to move a little to the right? What if you just want to go a little bit to the right? You can do what's called a feather, which is what I'm doing right here. So you're taking your paddle, kind of feather it back and forth, and you take the edge, see how I'm moving the blade here, just a little bit back and forth, kind of end up leaning on it a little bit. But you can move all over the place this way, and obviously the same way on the other side. You can move just a little bit. It's kind of like a draw stroke in canoeing, except with a canoe paddle. Of course, you got a canoe paddle. You can draw it and then pull it out, draw and pull it out. Or you can do what's called a J stroke, which is like this. It's a little bit more like what we're doing. But this feathering technique is a good way to just make micro adjustments. And I'll even do those in the middle of rapids sometimes. If I just feel like I need to be just a skosh to the left, because of course the hazard of turning your boat is, especially in a rapid, you're turning your boat so that waves could potentially hit you where you don't want them to hit. So if you're keeping your nose downstream like you should, and you just want to move a little to the left, and just move a little to the left and continue charging, thus not presenting your side of your boat to potential hazards. We're going to talk about your basic turns. You've got your forward stroke, and common one is called a sweep, which is where basically you just take your paddle blade and you push it farther forward than you normally would, just in front of your feet, and you come all the way back behind you, all the way to the edge of the boat, just like this. Practice that. It's a very effective method to turn the boat. That's your forward sweep. Backward sweep is exactly the same, except you're using the back of your blade and pushing from the back to the front. So that would be like this. It's also effective. It's not quite as effective generally as the forward sweep because it's easier to get a forward momentum. You can combine them to spin really fast. I'm doing it right here. This would be similar to the double oar turn on a raft, except you don't have both oars in at the same time, so it's not quite as like a tank turn. that's a sweep. And you can also use what's called a rudder. It's like you're going downstream, and you want to just kind of bring your nose a little bit to the left. You can just kind of rudder it. Put your paddle blade down in the back and just kind of push it out just a little bit, not very much. And from this side, just like that. That's your rudder. You can do a draw or a press to control your angle. Sometimes I'll do that when I'm in a rapid and I'm paddling towards, like a wall of waves or something, and I realize as I get close to it that it's coming at an angle differently than I thought, or I see an obstruction just as I get up there and I have my paddle blade in the water. Well, you could take a paddle stroke, and that might be a good effect, but sometimes you just need a slight correction. Started with a gentle forward stroke, which again is just in front of your knees to about your butt. And if you're moving in a current and you want to cut behind a rock, let's say I'm cutting behind a rock on my left, one of the most efficient ways to do that, in my opinion, is to use what's called a duffek. And a duffek is a turn that they use like in Olympics, C1, C2. And basically it's a bow draw like this. See how that just turns me around? Now the reason why I turn my paddle all the way around and put it in here, first of all, is because the current's going to be going that way. If I'm going to my left, or this way if I'm going to my right, is because that's the way the current's pushing. The current's going to be pushing that way in that eddy, that upstream eddy behind the rock. But also because when I do turn around, I'll just pretend like I'm turning around here for a second. When I do turn around, my paddle blade's going the correct direction for me to continue paddling if I need to move across or to another spot. So it's a very efficient technique to it. Let's do it one more time. See it again. This time I'll paddle through. I'll go to the left again. Now I'm going to paddle through. So I didn't have to make an extra stroke because my paddle was already in the water. So we'll try the one on the right now. To the right, so you can see it better because the camera's on that side. Get a little bit of momentum. You got to have some momentum to make this work. Of course, in the river, you're always going to have more momentum than you're going to have on a lake. So then, if you're wanting to cut downstream, you can grab that downstream current again. It's really important that you keep your center of gravity over your boat. Don't lean out too far, because then if you do get caught by some sort of a current, it can pull you. So that was the duffek. I use that all the time. If you watch my previous videos, you can't really tell because unfortunately you can't see much of me. But every time I cut behind a rock, I pretty much use that technique. Very rarely will I do something else to cut behind a rock or into an eddy. It's just so efficient. Once you get used to doing it, it's hard to do anything else. Such an efficient way to change directions quickly and maintain control and momentum. Do it one more time for the deep seats. And my paddle doesn't move much. I'm not really pulling hard. I'm just pivoting. And then the other thing you're going to obviously have to do, which I haven't really talked about, but when you do cut into that eddy, and you probably didn't necessarily notice, because it's a little imperceptible here, But when you do make that cut, you also have to lean towards it a little bit. You're kind of using it as a paddle plant on like a ski pole plant almost when you're skiing, you know, doing a little of that. And the reason why you do that, you lean that upstream a little bit, is because at the time that you're crossing that eddy, the current coming upstream towards this rock, this fictitious rock, that current is going to grab the boat, and it helps to push you into the eddy. You'll snap into the eddy. You'll just snap in. If you don't lean upstream, what'll happen is it'll grab this downstream edge, and it could flip you depending on how strong the eddy is. So it's critical that you make that lean, which will assist in the move, but also assist in you not flipping. So you don't want to flip. You can see where all the RVs are down there. We're down there where all those RVs are. I was heading over to this point. I just saw a really awesome blue heron. I thought, crap, I should get my camera out. Maybe I can get the next one shot for you. Big, beautiful bird. The weather is just stunning today. Almost windless, and it's like I'm the only one on the lake, although there is a guy fishing over there I saw. I can see a boat in the distance. See a lot of people fishing on this lake. I know they've got really good fishing on this lake. I don't fish though, so you won't catch me doing it.